What's up, guys, and welcome to the Paint Bravely podcast. This podcast where you can find a little bit of encouragement, discover ways to make your hobby more fun, and most importantly, try and learn how to paint bravely. So, how have you been, Brent?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. What's new with you?
Not a whole lot. I think I've been trying to sell my pool table this last week.
Okay, how's that going?
Not the best. I put up this listing and I tried to make it really fun on Facebook. You know, like a little bit quippy, trying to say like,
Like not too many stains on the felt, stuff like that.
Pretty much, like it's seen better days, but they've been good days, And I put up this whole thing of saying like, you have to have a professional mover come in and move this. I'm not going to allow you to put a hole in my wall. And then I put this caveat at the end of saying, unless you're a contractor or a carpenter, and also have beer.
So are you giving this away for free?
No, I'm selling this for money.
So you're selling it and requiring that they have professional movers.
Correct.
And you're making jokes about the condition of the table.
Yes. It's perfect. Okay. It's such a good listing. But,
and you said you're having trouble with this?
Yeah, well, so I've had people who are interested, but like I had these people come over the other day, and I was like, "You're gonna have a mover, right?" And he kind of didn't speak English very well, and he kind of was like, "Sure, yeah, no problem, whatever. I've got movers," and I'm like, "Okay, So they get there, and it's like this younger dude and two older dudes that don't speak English, or like the younger kid did. But like the table weighs 600 pounds.
And does it not disassemble? Can you not like take the legs off at least?
Oh, you can, but it's it's like a whole thing. It's this whole system.
You gotta like jack it up and then take each leg off. Like,
well, because there's a slate that goes on a pool table, right? And like my table happens to be fairly nice. So there are 3 tablets essentially that make up.
Yeah, or you're thinking you just move the whole thing at once.
Well, they were thinking they could just grab a couple guys, move the whole thing at once. And I had to explain to them
4 guys, 4 corners. Yeah,
3 dudes, like, and they're just like, they come over to the table and they're trying to lift it. I'm like, no, you can't lift it. They're like, what do you mean we can't lift it? I'm like, you literally cannot. Like, you cannot carry 200 pounds a piece with a 7-foot table.
Is this ground floor at least?
It is, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Although
do you
there's
have like
step out the front
do you have
door.
A big door? Do they have to turn it sideways to get out the door? Is it a straight shot? Like, what are we dealing with?
Well, if you
here?
take it apart, it only takes 2 people to move a pool table.
Okay.
But of course they didn't know that. So, they ended up leaving. And it kind of bums me out because like I'm trying to get rid of this table so that I can build a new studio.
Okay. I was going to say, like, are you just not into pool anymore or what? Like a pool table is a good thing to have around. I learned how to play Warhammer on a pool table. Like,
well, and that's literally why I have the pool table.
Okay.
Is to play Warhammer on. Yeah. Because I play a little bit of pool from time to time. Like it was nice when we got it, but it was really for board games and, Warhammer specifically. I just wanted a huge table in order to do that. And a pool table is a good way to go, but they're not easy to move. So, there are probably better options if you want to play Warhammer on a giant table.
True. If we had some sponsors or something, we'd tell you about the blank foldable gaming table.
The foldable gaming table with extendable legs.
Not today. Not today. Like,
no.
Today, especially if you live in Nevada, like give Casey a call. He's got a pool table. It's in pretty good condition and it's built solid. We know that. So
it is very solid. It is very solid.
So is this the last thing holding you back from actually starting the studio?
Pretty much, yeah.
Your last obstacle?
Yeah. It's like I have 2 rooms that are right next to each other. And they're kind of like these long, like double rooms, which is really weird. The last owners built this weird extension onto the end of this house. One room has the room I'm in right now. That's like a closet attached to the main room. and I'm going to turn that into 2 more rooms, you know, on the other side of my closet door, so that I can have a studio and there's just an extra room. And then all the stuff that's in the room right now is going to go where the pool table is. That way I can kind of have a little more control, you know, over what's going on for YouTube and, you know, recording podcasts and whatever. Nice. But that pool table is in my way. Yeah.
So I found, like, right now for my little recording area, I have a big table. It's an old kitchen table that I refinished, but I have a big table for kind of the central table of my recording area, and I can, you know, do my talking head bits. It's where I am right now, actually, you know, kind of talking across the table at the camera. And I really like having a big table in my recording area. Can you not repurpose the pool table for that? Have you ever tried to, like, put a chair, you know, kind of in the middle of the pool table and, like, sit at it like a desk kind of thing?
Yeah, actually, because I use it for board games and stuff.
Okay.
More than pool, obviously. You know,
I'm thinking worst case scenario here, where you find 0 more guys to come try to pick this thing up. Like, yeah. Like worst case, you cannot get rid of this thing. Like, could you find a way to make it part of your studio? I guess.
I've been thinking about that, like just to expedite this process and get this studio going. It's like, do I pay someone to come in and take this apart, or do I try and do it myself?
Throw a piece of plywood on top of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the thing is ridiculously heavy, and I don't even know where to start. Like, the fact that the slates are held together with wax, that was like I watched the dude put it on. He took a torch and this big block of wax, and he, like, went over it and scraped it and went over it and scraped it and, like, made it perfectly flat. So it's this whole thing, and I don't know if I can do it. Not that that matters for playing war games at all.
Right.
You know, for pool, I suppose. Yeah, I'm hoping to. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. See what I can do, because it wouldn't be horrible to have.
Yeah, throw a piece of plywood on top of it. Get yourself a nice, you know, flat surface. Start fresh. Like, there's your big man's desk right there. Like,
it would be a very large desk.
Actually, I don't know the dimension of a pool table. Maybe that's bigger than a piece of plywood. I don't know, but
no, actually, it's barely the size of an actual Warhammer table. Like
is it 6x4? Like,
yeah,
or the surface
table.
So okay.
Yeah, the actual
with the pockets and the rim and stuff, it actually would be wider than a piece of plywood. Then the overall width is wider than 4 feet, eh?
It is, I think, exactly 4 feet. Like, because I have a piece of plywood that I put on top of it for playing Warhammer. Because
you don't even play. You don't even play inside.
I can't.
Oh, okay.
I know. I want to.
No, I am. All of my early games of Warhammer Fantasy Battles were in my friend Mike's basement, and they had a pool table down there, and so it was, you know, the Bretonnians and the knights and the archers and the goblins and the vampires all, like, fighting around, like, one cardboard house and stuff. Like,
yeah.
You can definitely play Warhammer inside a pool table. You know,
for sure. I mean, when I started, it was the same kind of thing. It was like, well, this is a large surface, and that's the best we're gonna get. You know, we didn't even know. I don't even remember if I knew that there was a specific size.
Yeah, the felt is almost as good as a game mat, really. Like, that's not a bad surface to be putting your models on. That's all right.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It's nice and flat. They're not going to fall over.
Anyway, I wish you luck on your pool table situation. Well, I am genuinely excited to see what you can do with a new studio space. You know, get you out of that closet. Have a camera with a little bit longer focal length. We'll see what you can do, right? Like,
yeah, I think I'm most excited for that, is having the space to have an actual depth of field. You know?
Yes.
Like, have the bokeh in the background. It's nice and blurry. You know, I've got the nice lights, like the tungsten lights and the color and stuff, but it's like, yeah, there's no room.
Yeah. Well, that's a stylistic choice. Actually, in my videos, I like to have the depth of field, having everything in focus.
Sure.
That's what I like. You know, you get my face in focus. One, it just guarantees that the face will be in focus if everything's in focus. But, you know, also you get the background, you get You get the cat sleeping on the shelf back
That's,
there.
that's very true.
Uh,
Speaking of which, if you are listening to this on podcast services, we also put this up on YouTube. There's a video, and I can see both of Brent's cats right now, sleeping right behind him.
Now, normally the way you edit these, you're going to have a little Paint Bravely logo. That's going to probably cover up Gordon, but that's all right. We'll,
yeah.
It's all right. It's all right.
Just
you want to see Gordon, you watch Goobertown Hobbies YouTube channel. And if you don't care about cats, just listen to this podcast on your phone. But
exactly. Some people just aren't cat people, Brent.
And I understand that. But
my wife is not a cat person.
Okay.
We tried once. We got a cat. It was miserable for her.
Allergic, or she just hates him?
Nope, just hates him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She's just like, why does this cat have to knock things off the table? That's what cats do.
Yeah,
but
isn't that funny?
Why is that why?
Yeah, that's hilarious. Like,
I think it is.
You see how it just stole your hair tie? That's hilarious.
And then looked you in the eye like
it ran off. Yeah.
She just can't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always had cats.
A few years ago, I had a D&D game that was going on at my apartment, and one of the cats got in the habit of knocking dice off of a table. And so we actually used that cat for rolling dice for a couple of sessions. Like, all right, roll an insight check. You put a D20 in front of the cat where it's sitting on the shelf there, knocks over, you didn't see anything. You don't notice anything. You keep walking into the dungeon.
Exactly. That's pretty great. That's like a nice outside force of true randomness.
Yeah, exactly. Chaotic neutral, rolling your dice there.
Yeah. Well, speaking of D&D and board games and all this table talk, I suppose, what do you think about Kickstarter, minis and board games?
So, as I'm sitting here today, I haven't gotten sucked in as much as other people have with Kickstarter.
Just a little.
So, just a little. So, to date, trying to search my memory here, I think I have done exactly one Kickstarter where I've pledged money and sat there hitting refresh, and rooting for all the unlocks and everything. So far I've pledged money to Artisan Guild Kickstarter for a bunch of Amazon 3D printed minis, and I can see the appeal. Mm-hmm. I can see why people do get sucked in, because there are so many creative people with awesome ideas that are putting stuff up on Kickstarter, and then the whole organization, the way that it's kind of like eBay in some sense. The thrill of the hunt of putting down your money and then seeing whether you're going to get a cool deal or not, and then except once something is fully funded, it's oh yeah, I'm going to get something cool, but I hope more and more and more people join in so that all these unlocks happen and I get even more cool stuff, and you get kind of a little bit of ownership of it, and you get really excited to see where it's going to go. And then, oh, look, there's another Kickstarter I could be backing at the same time while I wait to see how this one's going to finish up. I understand how some people just accumulate piles and piles of Kickstarter goodies there.
Right. Yeah, I've done a few at this point, and it definitely feels like that kind of eBay feeling, you're going to get something, and you're just stretch goal after stretch goal waiting for that in. I did the Dark Souls game, board game. And that was, I think that was 3 years ago now. And I just got the last shipment a few months ago. So that's a thing. It takes years to get these things. So this excitement right up front.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at least the ones I've done. I also did the Horizon Zero Dawn, if you've ever played that game. It was for PlayStation. Yeah. No? It's pretty good.
I never owned a PlayStation. It went N64. That was my first platform. And then Xbox original. I did get a Wii and a 360 eventually. Didn't spend a lot of time on either of those, but I'm more of a PC if anything.
Oh, sure.
But never had a PlayStation. Like I was around in the early days. You know, I went to friends' houses who had PlayStation, and my memory was always all of the games were cars that had missile launchers that shot at other cars. That was
just twisted metal.
Yeah. Is that what? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. In my mind, that's what PlayStation was. And also I hated the controller. So no interest.
Very interesting.
Oh, good. Cars that shoot other cars and a controller that I hate. No thanks.
You never got down on some Crash Bandicoot?
No, just right over my head. No, nothing. Does he have a car? I mean, I know he's a cartoon fox or whatever, but did he have a car?
Yeah, they did do a Mario Kart style Crash racing. So I mean that's a thing. You're not entirely wrong with the whole car combat PlayStation 1 era.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
but,
So as this podcast is going along, I wonder if, my persona on the podcast is going to be the curmudgeon-y guy who
who hates
judges like,
look at my shirt, Brent. Look at it.
Oh, look at that. All right. Casey is wearing a PlayStation shirt.
We learned some things today.
What one of the earlier episodes that we recorded, like I was talking about how I had no interest in the Avengers and did not care at all. And Avengers End War, who cares? Like Spider-Man's gonna be fine. Get over it. Like
I'm gonna leave that one hanging for the comments.
This episode, Brent, no interest in PlayStation.
Right.
Yeah. What? So.
PC elitist guy.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I did settle after all the years went by. Like, yeah, PC elitist, sure.
Yeah, I did a lot of that too. A lot of PC gaming.
It can play better video games for cheaper, and also do word processing. So yeah,
right.
Yeah, I'm a PC elitist. Like, yeah, you got me. Like, you can record a podcast on your PS4 or 5. I don't know, maybe. Probably not easy.
I'm trying to think. You can Skype, so technically.
Okay, can you edit audio files on your place? It's okay. It's all right. All right.
We're getting in deep.
Yeah. Moving on. We were talking about minis Kickstarters.
Yeah. It's a video game.
On the PlayStation. Continue.
Yeah, and there was a Kickstarter for a board game. And the minis are really cool. And I think I got that like a year ago, and there's barely been any updates. So probably not going to get minis for that for another couple years, but so I'd say it's a pretty crappy thing about Kickstarters, but they are extremely exciting, and you get a lot of stuff with them.
Yeah, like I said, I've only done the 3D print Kickstarter so far, where that's an STL file, and depending on the company, some of them have like the files ready to go, and so
that's so cool.
Like the one Kickstarter I've done was actually really fast delivery, but I have heard all these stories about you. The Kickstarter is funded, you pay your money, you forget about it for a year or two at a time. Every once in a while, you're like, hey, I wonder how that's going. Or like, did they... Is that money gone forever, or am I going to get something in the mail, or should I update my address on this thing, or what's going on? But and then you hear about people who slowly start to get things trickling in, like 2 years after they cared about the item.
Yeah, exactly. Is it worth it at that point?
Yeah, so I wonder in that experience, like, how many people are excited and as excited as they were when they first committed to fund the game or the minis or whatever, and how many people are just like, Horizon Dawn, like I play Imperial Guard now. What am I going to do with this? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
I switched armies. This means nothing to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't a Brood Lord. Like, what am I going to do with this?
Oh man.
Or just throw it in the pile. Yeah.
Throw it in the pile. Exactly. What I was gonna say is you start to accrue these piles of minis that you kind of care about, and then the next new thing comes along or the next Kickstarter, and then all of a sudden you get another 20 boxes of miniatures. And I guess that brings up the question is, miniatures don't take up a whole lot of space. They're very small. Why is it that everyone that is in this hobby, or at least a majority of people, like can't find enough room for this hobby?
I'd say, before we get on that, like board games do take up a fair bit of space.
They do.
Like,
yeah.
And a lot of the mini Kickstarters, not all of them, but like, I suppose like the Bones Kickstarters, I think those are just like bags of primed minis.
Sure.
I think those can, like, I haven't participated in one of those. Like one of these days I probably will get in just on a Bones Kickstarter run.
A bunch of random stuff.
Partially that, partially just for the experience. Like there's some of these things are like big enough in our culture. Like, oh, you've never been in on a Bones Kickstarter. Like those are they're exciting. Like they're part of the culture at this point. And there's some things you just got to do. Like everybody should go to Disneyland once in their life. Like everyone should do a Bones Kickstarter. Like, and my understanding is that those pack down pretty well. Like you get a box with like bags of minis, but if you get like a board game or something, that's a big rectangle, and the actual minis take up maybe 10% of the box.
That's true.
Depending on the box. And then you got your tokens and your board and your rules and your other packing material, and then the box. Are they a standard size box? You got a lot of boxes there behind you. Are any of them the same size? Do any of them stack neatly on top of each other?
That would be a no.
No. So, kind of on staying on the subject of Kickstarters for just a second longer here. Like, I'm also just not a big board game player, and for me, I am resistant to learning new rules.
Right.
And that's just me. I don't know if it's like not a learning disability or something, but like I have a hard time focusing on like learning a new rule set. It doesn't capture my attention the way it does for other people. And so in something like Warhammer, like when a new rule set comes out, you got your what's the new 40K rules expansion?
Psychic Awakening?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I have no interest in keeping up on all of the +1s and -1s that come along with something like that. And this gets a reroll now. And that's one of the reasons why I not involved in competitive play or anything. Like all the subtleties of rule systems don't hold a lot of interest for me. For me, it's like the minis. And I'd probably be more interested in some of these Kickstarter games if they had like just the minis options, or like I think I see like a Gloomhaven box behind you.
Oh yeah.
Like if I could buy just the minis, other than very expensive eBay auctions, if I could buy like just the minis from a game like that, I'd be much more interested in that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'd paint the minis, and maybe I'd get so attached that I actually would be interested in learning the game or something. But
if we ever get to hang out in person, that's not necessarily at a convention, we should play Gloomhaven.
Okay.
It's one of those, like, it's a big box, weighs like 50 pounds, miniatures, crap everywhere. Not very hard to play. Yeah. 5-minute explanation.
Nice.
So.
Okay. That's good.
Now that you mentioned it, though, it's like, I'm going to try and get you to play something.
Fair enough. I respect it. I enjoy the challenge. For the last couple of years, I've been going to Gen Con, and I really enjoy it. I love the convention of tens of thousands of nerds in one place, and some of them are dressed up, and there's games everywhere, and there's minis everywhere. Like I really enjoy Gen Con, and walking through the vendor hall, is a crazy experience because you get to see just how many games are out there, how many different minis are out there.
Yeah.
And something kind of funny though is like every time I stop at a booth, they're like, "Oh, what's this mini? This is cool." And then the show rep or sometimes even like the game designer is telling me like, "Yeah, this game is set in an alternate 1600s universe,
You're just like,
and it's a skirmish game, and what you got to know is though the Dark Wizard took over what in our world would be called Spain, but in their world it's called the Necro Hive." Yeah. and I'm just like, don't care. Like, do these lizards have feathers? Like, that's awesome. Like,
I feel that exactly. It's like, I get that enthusiasm. I understand it. And I get that you want to share this whole thing. Like, nothing interests me less than somebody being like, but you see, it's alternate history and it's set in here and this is what this is. And it's like, I really don't care.
And there's,
like,
there's good fantasy out there. There's good stories out there.
Yeah.
But something that goes along with
is tough. Because it's like, this is a mechanical game. Like, there are mechanics involved. And you're trying your best to, like, mimic things that would be done in this fantastical world, and 99% of the time it doesn't come across the way you think it does, unless you're just so in your head about it that it's awesome. Like, Dungeons and Dragons takes imagination. You're trying to take some of that out by putting mechanics into a board game. You're gonna lose some of that, like, feeling.
So I think that's an interesting point about like Kickstarter board games.
Yeah.
So there, all of these creative people have ideas for games and for minis that they want to get out there and, spread the good word and make some money. And I respect that. But each of these board games, does have to have a unique rule system and a unique lore to get it to sell and to have some identity and probably some legal reasons.
Yeah.
But then you do end up with all of these pseudo fantasy lore sets and all of these, pseudo fantasy worlds. And
Yeah.
I'm sure some of them are interesting if you can get into it, but just the kind of the way that every game has to have some made up lore. And I'm sure some of them have like a lot of effort put into that, some really creative people spending time on it. But for me, a lot of this hobby is just about the minis for me.
Yep.
So, and I understand that to kind of give those minis context, you need to have a lore system.
Mm-hmm.
But with all these small companies, they have to make their own lore system. They have to make their own IP.
There's no
and
unifier,
Yeah. And so in some ways, that's like you can see it as a pro and a con to Kickstarter, and kind of having this more open sourced game creation is you get so much new IP, and some of it is just the bare bones to explain the rule set they want. Mm-hmm. Some of it's really in depth that the creator loves, but most other people just can't get into. Yeah. And that's, the Warhammer 40K lore and fluff has always seemed like kind of silly to me, but it's impressive that there's so much of it. And it's become like a pillar of the nerd community or whatever you want to call it. Like it exists on its own. Like I think there's like Wikipedia pages for like the God Emperor and stuff, like on actual Wikipedia, like
on actual like it's Wikipedia. Not just some like
or certainly like Lord of the Rings fantasy, like Like I think like Aragorn probably has his own actual Wikipedia entry. I could be wrong on this, but like there are some lore sets that are so established in the culture that they take on a life of their own and they have real weight and importance to them. Mm-hmm. But then you have a Kickstarter game where two people spent a couple of years of their life really working hard on. And they had to real quick scribble down where the dwarves in their game came from.
Right, exactly.
They're miners, but they're miners from an alternate Cuba.
Like what kind of twist could we alternate Cuba? Yeah.
Alternate Scotland. Sorry. Like,
You gotta have something. There's got to be a catch to your dwarves if they're not different from other 50 billion versions of dwarves. Like, I mean, even Games Workshop did that with the whole sky dwarf thing,
oh, of course,
which I freaking love, by the way.
So the Games Workshop stuff, again, because it has so much like momentum and inertia, like eventually their stupid ideas do start to make sense in my head.
Right.
I don't know if it's repetition or brainwashing or whatnot.
It's brainwashing and just being hit in the head over and over.
Over and
with
over
the
and
same
over
stuff.
and over.
Like, nope, this is real.
Yeah.
This is still real.
No, the gene seed. Like,
Well, like, this Age of Sigmar's existence in itself threw people so hard, and they just didn't stop. And now it's the thing, right? Like,
right.
It's there.
Man, that's definitely a whole podcast topic if you want it to be.
The death of Warhammer Fantasy.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember a couple years ago, like I found out about the death of Warhammer Fantasy just as I was getting back into the hobby.
Yeah.
So, had the long hobby break, and I was getting into it like maybe 6 months after Warhammer Fantasy had died, something like that. Mm-hmm. And, I remember going into a game store to buy some colors. And of course, the first thing back I was painting was Dark Eldar Warriors, but I was buying some like bright, fun colors. And I go to the cash register, I check out, and, the guy sitting there says like, you painting some lizard men or whatever. And I'm like, man, I wish, right? Like, rest in peace, lizard men. Like, no, these are for Dark Eldar. It's like, no, you can still play lizard men. Like, they're still here. Like, nope, they're not. Sorry. And of course, now I've like bought more Seraphon, and I'm ready to go. But
there's newer stuff coming out. Like, over the last year or so, they've been teasing it. There's definitely new Seraphon stuff. Like,
there's new rules. There's a few new pictures. Mm-hmm. There's a new temple piece of terrain, like a Mayan pyramid kind of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any actual new dinosaurs coming out. I don't know. It'll be cool if there are. I'm sure, like for Underworlds, that they'll have some lizard men eventually. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like on this topic, like any crazy thing that Games Workshop does, any stupid lore that they decide to put into their canon,
yes,
they have the strength to make that work. Yeah. They have the strength to say, no, these are memories of dinosaurs with lasers on their back that are brought back by toad people. And
from space.
From space. Yeah. And the toad people have been fine in space for a while, and look, and I haven't even read this lore. I'm just like through osmosis, like I'm aware of what's happened. Like, and like, yeah, that's silly, but like it sets in because Games Workshop has the reach and the size to do that. Yeah. And so any stupid idea from the Warhammer universe or 40K universe eventually becomes like, okay, all right, yeah, I guess that makes sense in context. Like, somehow. All right, you know what? Now that I think about it, like after a couple of years of kind of incubating in the brain and getting hit out, over and over and over with the gene seed needs to be recovered from the fallen warriors. Like, okay, all right, that makes sense. Like they can't grow that organ anew. Like, yeah, they only have so many of those organs that they can transplant into their brother warriors. Like, yeah, okay, yeah. When it comes down to it, you need an apothecary to do that work, and it's not a glamorous job, but yeah.
Somebody's gonna do it.
Somebody's got to do it. Yeah, and I think there's only room for so much of that like crap in your brain. Like there's at some point you just stop like, okay, I don't need any more like
that's why somebody comes at me and starts to tell me, and I'm just like, I can't, dude. Like I can't put more in.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is set in an alternate 1500s where like monsters come out from the bottom of the sea. Like, cool, yeah.
That's great. Yeah.
And I understand why cool. Yeah, like these are cool minis. Like, yeah, and see this one's the leader because
Because
he's got a cool hat. Like I got it.
yeah.
Like that's
That's like when you're
like
10 years old talking Lego. Like, see, this one's the best because he has a hat. This one over
and I
here is
understand
even
why this has
better.
to exist.
I
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
But I mean, it's that like child. I don't know. There's an innocence about it, like this childhood innocence of like you're just so excited about this story, and everyone else is like, "That's great. That's
And I
real
don't
great."
think and I fully expect that like some of the stories for these smaller games are actually pretty cool.
Oh, I'm
And
sure
if
they
they
are. Yeah,
and if they had the weight of a medium or larger sized company backing them
yeah,
up
yeah.
and creating a black library for this smaller game, I'm sure a lot of them would be better works of fiction than
They
some of
probably
this
would be
Games
than
Workshop
space
insanity.
dinosaurs.
Yeah, yeah. I think most people probably could do better than Space Dinosaurs,
I
but
think so. Yeah,
GW has the marketing and the
yeah.
just sheer inertia to make Space Dinosaurs like, yeah, this is a thing. Yeah, that's crazy. That's what makes it cool.
They
Like,
have an
and
iron
then
resolve.
all right, it's cool. You got it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh man.
The Iron Resolve, like publish the video on Space Dinosaurs, turn off the comment section, and Space Dinosaurs
Yes.
are out there.
Oh, and they totally turn off the comment section. They're like, we don't
yeah.
care what you think. This will happen. It's already in motion, and you can't stop it.
Yeah, yeah, and that works for them. Like it,
Yes.
they can pull that off. But yeah, just when I'm walking around looking at all these small games, like I get drawn in by the minis, and like me personally, when I'm looking at a game, like I am pretty much assuming that I'm going to be throwing out the board, going to be throwing out the rule set, going to be chucking the tokens right in the bin, and unless maybe they're made out of plastic, you might make some like terrain out of them or something.
Sure,
But
yeah.
for me, when I'm looking at a boxed game, it's like how many minis are in here, and what's the MSRP of this game, and
Yeah.
and how many of those minis do I want to paint? That's
Yeah.
kind of what I look at. Like,
Well, in
and
that
that's
case, I would say that most Kickstarters not worth it.
oh, okay, all right. Good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
But there's, I mean, so there's the board game Kickstarters, and then there's like 3D printing Kickstarters, and then there
I
are
do like
the
the
like
idea
just
of that,
selling
for sure.
minis. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So maybe that's why I've been a little bit more immune, is because I don't get sucked into board games in quite the ways that some people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, that's not because I'm better than anybody. It's just because I like hate learning new rules, and so I don't have that that attraction. I don't have the ability to love new board games in the way that some people can get sucked in. But
Yeah.
uh,
No,
like,
we're all different in that manner anyways. Like some people build computers in an old iMac, and some people read friggin' board game rules for days just to try and figure out one
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Everybody can get sucked into their own thing, and that's what makes hobbies great. And like, yeah, finding something that you're passionate about and that does suck you in like that is a good thing, as long as it doesn't result in you spending like hundreds of dollars a month on Kickstarter or
Right. And I mean, they get real expensive. I mean, like you think you're getting all these stretch goals and it's real cool, but it's like, no, you are still paying for that.
So have you
like
ever gotten in on Kingdom Death or any of the really premium stuff? Like
not I mean, I wish I was around for Kingdom Death.
well, they're still constantly pumping stuff out, as far as I understand. Yeah.
I mean, I've seen what it does to people.
Okay.
As much as I want those minis, like I don't know if I could do that to myself. Yeah, even just doing the Dark Souls one, which has a lot of minis, like I don't know that I'm ever gonna paint any of them. Like I have too many minis and not enough time.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just there are just so many, and some of them are really cool. But then I have to ask myself, like, well, why am I even painting this? Like, I've played the game. I played it once,
Okay.
and it was fun.
You
But
sat down there, you learned a rule set, you played one game. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
and then waited
Yeah.
for the rest of the minis over the next, year and a half, and they
Uh-huh.
finally just got here. Um,
Well, cool.
yeah, but now I don't know what to do with them. I just have
So,
them.
so are you like pro or con Kickstarter? Where are you? Where are you feeling?
I think that for a majority of people, it's a con. It seems like it's a cool thing and it's super fun to do. But the
Mhm.
fact is that and specifically for a board game, right, with minis, you're probably not even going to be interested by the time you get them. Like this Horizon Zero Dawn thing, like I'm hoping I'll still be excited, but I don't think so. And I really like the idea of the 3D printed ones though. Like if you have access to a 3D printer, I think that's an awesome way to go. It's kind of like 3D printer Patreon accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you get that like monthly reward.
Yes. Yep. And those are things that I'm definitely a part of. I have a couple of resin printers now, and I do enjoy using them. They kind of lay dormant for a couple of weeks at a time, and then I'll spend a couple of days printing out as much as I can. And there's a lot of awesome minis and bits and greebles, I believe they're called, like little bits you can put on stuff. Yeah, it's old Black Magic Craft Jeremy calls them greebles, like when you get print off an air conditioning unit that you can stick onto the side of your building, or a ladder, or a little control panel or something like that. Yeah, greebles. So yeah, there's definitely cool stuff on Kickstarter. Mm-hmm. My feeling is that I feel lucky to not be sucked into it, I guess.
Yeah.
I feel lucky to be a little bit immunized because I don't enjoy learning new rules. I don't get sucked into the lore of new games as easily. So if it's kind of like a three-pronged attack of rules and lore and minis, it's only the minis that pull me in. Yeah. And I feel like if you're susceptible to 2 out of the 3, then you might be into like some real trouble.
Yeah.
For me, it's just the minis, and I am trying to get better at not buying more minis because I already have such a pile that it is becoming slowly but surely easier for me to not buy a set of minis because I have such a backlog at this point, which, it's embarrassing that I have that backlog, but it is starting. It can be. Sometimes it's stigmatized as like a bad thing to have a ridiculous backlog, but at least I think it's starting to stabilize because the sheer mass of minis to paint backlog is starting to slow my purchasing habits.
Yeah. I can see how that would help at least you a little bit.
Yeah.
So like you said, you have a backlog. How do you store all that stuff? Like, how big is it, I guess? Just put you on the spot.
It's big. I mean, it is almost certainly thousands of minis, probably, a couple of thousand, probably. And it's big enough that I can't put it all on a table or 2 tables at a single time. It is in many different boxes. Like over time, I have started to get a little bit better organized. And so like the volume of backlog hasn't gone up too badly for me, because I've been better at like condensing the minis and the bits into
smaller trays.
I was gonna say smaller trays, but it ends up being like the same amount of space, but just getting more and more and more into the same amount of space. But I've been better at condensing my supply into a space that hasn't grown too much.
Yeah.
And I do actually think I have some systems that I like for condensing minis and stuff. But at this point, I have a giant backlog. It would be a true test to try to spread it out and evaluate it or try to get a census or anything on my backlog. I generally know what I have. Like if I have a hankering, like do you wanna paint a savage orc? Like I have savage orcs. I know basically where they are. Like let me go see what I have for savage orcs and maybe start on that project.
Yeah.
So I'm not at a point where I've forgotten about what I own. That's good. It's still mostly organized in my mind. Like I'm not at risk of like accidentally rebuying something that I already have. I know some people are like at that point and beyond. Like, I already
20
had
more of these things. I don't know where they are. I can't find them. Just buy more.
or literally forget that they bought them
exactly.
2 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you do when you accidentally buy the same army twice because you forgot you had them?
I enjoy the independent characters podcast, but sometimes those guys, like that's a that's a serious thing that Carl talks about, like finding a Forge World model that he had forgotten he purchased or something like
Some
that.
stupid expensive model. It's like, oh, that's where that went.
Well, the thing here is that day is coming. Someday that will happen, and all of a sudden I'll be living in a new world where like, oh, I can actually forget that I own something and rebuy it, or like open a drawer and like, what's this? Like, I didn't think I actually bought this. Right. But yeah, so my collection, I wouldn't say I've been playing Warhammer for 20 years, but 20 years ago, I got my first Warhammer minis and, some breaks in there. And then when I came back to it as an adult with some purchasing power, with modern eBay, modern, Amazon Prime shipping and, all of the modern amenities. Yeah. So I got back into it as an adult with some purchasing power, and I did what not quite adults do. I don't know. Like I don't want to say I did what adults do, and I bought hundreds of dollars of minis. Like no,
I'm an adult now. I buy what I want.
I did what children with an adult's credit card do, and I bought. But yeah, so over the last several years, I've bought a bunch of new minis. I've bought a bunch of eBay auctions that looked like a pretty good deal, and I've had a couple of serious Craigslist hauls. And one of them in particular was a Craigslist auction, and it was out middle of nowhere, New Hampshire, which for me was like 2 or 2.5 hour drive, like out of my way from in a direction I would never go otherwise. Right. And it was a Craigslist auction with no pictures, just said like got a couple of boxes of Warhammer stuff out here, $200. I'm like, yeah, we'll give it a shot. And it ended up being like 6 or 7 like real boxes, like like big totes. And it was from a gamer who had unfortunately passed away, and his family was getting rid of his stuff and unloading, but it filled my car with Warhammer stuff, and that was kind of a white whale kind of day. Like it just
I don't think that happens to very many people very often.
It doesn't. I mean, it's the dream. And this happened before I started my YouTube channel or anything, right. And it was both like I now have unlimited bits and projects to last me the rest of my life. It clearly these projects lasted beyond this person's life. Yeah. I am inheriting his projects, but it was an interesting moment of before that day, I had a backlog that I could realistically complete in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And after that day, I mean, it's a really interesting transition. Like now I have a backlog that I can never complete.
Well, that someone else couldn't legitimately complete in their lifetime, short as it was, but
correct.
It says a lot.
And, Yeah, so I did go through that and, cleaned a bunch of the stuff and condensed it. And I did throw away, some old boxes and clipped some sprues and got rid of the sprues. And I was able to condense that. But it was still, at this point, my backlog is probably more than I can do in a lifetime.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, I could.
Unless you focus.
I could. Devote myself to some monk-like existence of painting minis with a very strange life goal of completing my life's work and this other gentleman's life's work. And
man secludes himself from society to finish backlog.
I'm painting for two now.
Interesting thought.
But short of that, at my current rate, no, I will never finish that backlog. And even if someone's backlog is only a couple of boxes of minis, for most people who are actively involved in the hobby, it just is the case. Most people do buy faster than they paint.
Yeah, for sure.
At least most people with a credit card with a reasonably healthy credit card. Yeah.
Healthy. Yeah.
A credit card that isn't being declined.
Is that? Yeah. It's healthy enough.
Healthy enough. Yeah.
To buy more minis. Sure. It might be 20% a month on that, but whatever's worth it. Even though you're not going to paint it for another year.
Yeah. I mean, if you're involved in the hobby, and you're listening to this podcast, you heard Casey and I talk about Lizardmen and Seraphon a few minutes ago. You heard us talk about Dark Souls minis. When we mentioned those words for a brief moment, you thought about, would I like to paint some Dark Souls minis? Would I like to paint some Lizardmen? What color would my dinosaurs be?
Yeah.
And so, even if you're listening to this podcast as you are painting one figure, it crossed your mind buying a box of lizards.
Right.
That.
Space lizards with lasers? That's a real thing? Yes.
Yeah. I've heard rumors that they're kind of moderating the lore a little bit. So now they're not dream lizards anymore.
Right.
I haven't read up on this, but eventually the osmosis is really going to penetrate and I'm going to understand why they're no longer dreams of lizards of the past.
Right.
But
they're actual space lizards from the planet Pterodon.
Yeah, but now there are more excuses now for you to get back into those lizards. So think about it as you're painting that one mini that you're going to half paint today as you're listening to this podcast. Think about buying 20 lizards in a box. Think about buying a couple boxes of lizards. Get a big lizard, some small lizards. The point is, most of us have, for all kinds of reasons, most of us do have a backlog that is going to be very hard to ever zero out.
Absolutely.
Short of selling stuff.
Sure.
And I know you have a solution to this where you do like to sell stuff, and that's probably healthy. Yeah.
I feel like it is sometimes, because it's it is freeing to I won't sell any of my original stuff, like my armies, anything that's fully completed, that I've put a lot of time into. I definitely don't think that anybody should sell their original stuff. But if you're buying something on eBay with the express thought of I'm going to flip this and resell it, then you can kind of approach that as I can experiment and do kind of fun things on this model. And then as long as I get my money back, I feel pretty good about it.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's been pretty awesome for me. Make a little bit of extra cash sometimes. It goes for more than what I bought it for, and I'm able to buy more minis and flip those, or add to my personal collection or armies or whatever. Doing that, I still have an insane amount of brand new stuff in boxes that hasn't even been opened, and that pile just continues to grow. And I don't see it stopping anytime soon. I mean, I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. If you can afford to do that, then by all means, buy the cool stuff you want. Don't ever expect that you're going to actually paint it all.
Right. Right. And in some ways it's like having like a personal library, you know, like having the ability to say, you know, I want to paint today. What do I want to paint today?
Yeah,
You know what? I want to start a new project, and I got an idea, and I think I have that many. Like it's kind of nice to have a supply of different projects available for you right at your fingertips that you can get to. And so it's in that respect, it's not a bad thing to have a big collection of unpainted minis. Like you always are able to kind of take that inspiration right when it's fresh and grab something. You know, a rainy day, you're not going to leave the house, but whew, I've got some squigs here. Like
There's no bad day to paint a squig.
Yeah, you can't sleep one night. You've just been thinking about the salamanders chapters of Space Marine, and whew, you got an idea. You got a green you want to try out, and you've got
particularly.
Well, right here I've got Primaris and I've got Tactical right here. Which is it gonna be? Like, you know.
Do you ever have those thoughts like late at night? Like legitimately, like I've been wandering around or doing something late at night, and literally for salamanders specifically thought, like, how would I paint that like dark skin tone? Like, what would I do? You know, and I'm like, it's been an hour and I'm thinking about this thing. It's like, I didn't actually go and try it. I've just been thinking about it. It's a weird thing.
Well, I mean, that's what a hobby is. It's something that does kind of take hold of your mind when you're not working on it.
Yeah.
And that's somewhere on the list of things that qualify as an addiction also.
For sure.
Yeah. Something you think about during work, think about when you wake up, like about starts to have negative effect on other aspects of your life.
Well, okay, yeah.
But yeah, that's somewhere on the border of passion and addiction. But it's not a bad thing to have something that you
thin line.
But no, it's good to have stuff that you love and that you think about, and yeah. So for all the people with massive backlogs, I will defend it enough to say that it is awesome to always have access to a variety of bits. If you are working on a model and you think it would be awesome to have a body or a skull or a piece of junk or whatever, it is awesome to be able to go into your bits closet and pull out a sweet part that's going to make your model look cool. And it's not bad to have that library or that stock, that variety. Like that's not terrible. But again, like talking about thin lines, like there is like a line where it becomes a hoard, where maintaining your collection becomes a serious problem, where you're paying rent or mortgage for a decent number of square feet that is occupied with boxes and totes of models and supplies and dirt and
like
and
literally
sand
dirt
and
in jars.
and dried plants and so yeah, I mean there is a point where storage and maintenance of your collection becomes a serious concern, because if you are trying to do something in your closet and it's overflowing with boxes of minis, like that, everything in moderation, or I don't know, you gotta keep it under control to a degree. There comes a point where you want to do something else with your basement, or
right.
have some room to store some other stuff down there.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about storage. We've rationalized why you might have a big backlog, and we'll go with it is okay to have a lot of figurines. We all love minis. We love this stuff. Any hobby has paraphernalia and gear. It is okay to have a collection of cool stuff that you love, but let's try to have it manageable, have it so that you can condense it down into a reasonable amount of space, whatever you believe reasonable to me in this situation, but also be accessible.
I do think accessibility is probably the most important part of storage in general. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one thing to know that you definitely have 10 boar boys somewhere, and then it's another thing to actually be able to go and find all 10 of those boar boys
Yeah.
like within 10 minutes of realizing that you want to paint one.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, because if you can't immediately,
yeah.
you're that moment's passed.
Yeah, it is good to be aware that you've already bought a Forge World model before, or to know that somewhere you have 20 Marauders. But if you can't find those 20 Marauders, they're not giving you joy. They're giving you frustration as you dig through like all your vampires and can't find those Marauders. like just moving jars of dirt and dried plants around, and where are those Marauders? And they're not in this tote. They're not in this tote. Maybe I put them in this one. Like what about this box on the bottom of the stack? Like there's some marker on that box, but I'm pretty sure that's from the last time I moved. Like, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'd definitely say that it's cool to have a large collection, but you got to keep it organized and you got to know where stuff is. So,
yeah.
All right, Casey, teach me how to do this. Like, what do you got?
How to organize your closet?
Yeah, help me, Casey.
Well, let's see here. I have zero organization in this closet other than it's very
Casey,
important.
You came up with the topic for this podcast.
You're right. I did.
Was it because you needed advice?
A little bit, yeah. I'm drowning here, man. I'm drowning in boxes. It's killing me. I don't know how to paint.
Sell them all before it's too late.
Oh, see, and I feel bad for that though. And it's not that I don't have organization. I do have some. Like I've got, the nice plastic bins that I can see into, which I think is important. You can see it directly. All of my grass and sand and rocks are all separated. So I've got my terrain stuff separate. I have an IKEA drawer that I absolutely hate. Behind me that has a boatload of stuff in it that's separated, into bits and that kind of thing. That's just going to be an ongoing theme, I think.
IKEA, yeah. Seemed like a good idea at the time, but then it just keeps wearing on you.
Yeah, exactly. It does, too. It's just like every time I try and close a drawer, all of a sudden, like, I don't know, a screw in the back caught on, and somehow it unscrewed itself. So it's a whole other thing. But yeah, like I tend to keep the boxes that the models come in and store the bits in those boxes because it's already marked. I don't have to have a clear box or have to mark it or put anything down. Like I could be better at organizing those boxes. I use a lot of them for display purposes, but I have strategically placed my boxes behind me so that if I turn around, I can quickly access specific bits that I want. So for me specifically, like my space is fairly small and I've set everything up around me within arm's distance. Like I can reach all of my bits without really moving. And that does help. Like if you're, excuse me, if you're in a basement, then, you're going to start to have piles and stacks and that can get a little bit overwhelming. You can have bits from all sorts of different things and not even know. Like I have a box of skulls somewhere, but they're so small. How do you keep that stuff separate?
So I actually do have a fair number of thoughts on this. I was giving you crap earlier, but I actually do have some storage suggestions that I stand by here.
Yeah.
So I've found plastic bags, like just Ziploc sandwich bags, to be one of the most important tools.
Oh yeah.
I have come to find that clear boxes and clear bags are some of the most important stuff that you can have. Yeah. And so my system, I have a lot of kind of like bigger Tupperware boxes, not the full totes, but like 15 inches or something like that, like a little bit more than a foot per side, and I don't know, 8 inches deep or something. But I have a series of those, and you can put a lot of stuff in terms of minis. Minis can condense down to fit a lot in one of those boxes.
Yeah.
And the fact that they are clear is the most important part.
Yes.
and you can especially put a lot of stuff in them if you have like a whole bunch of Ziploc bags, and sometimes I use like sandwich bags.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I use like even smaller, like drug bags, you might call them.
Sure.
Like tiny Ziploc bags. Like if you
little
have a pile of skulls, put those in a small Ziploc bag and chuck them into your clear plastic bin. And then also in that plastic bin, you can have a baggie for all your bolter guns and all your whatever else. And so I've found that the plastic, especially for bits, like a little plastic bag provides enough protection, especially if the only other thing in the box is other plastic bags. If you're really worried, you can fill it with a little bit of air, but normally you don't need to.
I've never had a bit just randomly break in a bag, like sitting in a drawer, you know?
Right. When I've needed to seriously condense, I do take stuff off the sprue. Especially for kits where they're not like numbered bits that only go together in a certain way.
Specific kinds of kits, the older kits especially.
The older kits, you can put any torso on any set of legs and any arms on the torso, and you're good to go.
Those days have gone.
those days are gone, but for a lot of our collections, that's what they are.
True. Yeah. Still so many of
for
those.
Yeah, for all the old Dark Eldar warriors, you take all the bits off, you put all the bits in the same bag, and you can, any of them will go together. Yeah, that's a left arm. You put it on the left side of the torso, you're good to go. Yeah, right. For the newer Dark Eldar kit, like some of the torsos go together like a little bit weird, or I think like like the hips or something.
Yeah, it's like this torso.
They don't all go
specifically. Yeah.
Right, and so. I did, I did have a time where I cut all those off the sprue, and then I had to spend like a good long while like figuring out how to put them together. Or for me it was like sitting there like a puzzle, them all laid out, and then okay, if these ones go together, then do these ones go together, and do these ones go together, and then like the last two pieces I have left, these do not go together. All right, try it out. They're a different combo. But
I've sat there and done that before. I've taken those bits and I've laid them out and thought to myself, yes, process of elimination. I will figure out what bits go together. What ends up happening about 2 minutes later is I get an X-Acto knife and I make it fit. And then when I run into the piece that's supposed to go with the other piece, whatever, I will make that piece fit. And that's it.
Well, worst case, that box of 10 warriors becomes 9 warriors and some extra bits.
Exactly.
And someday those extra bits will be good. But
yes.
But yeah, for the most part, you can do a lot of condensing by taking stuff off the sprue, as long as you know what it goes to, putting it in little plastic bags, putting the plastic bags in a larger clear bin. One of the suggestions that I went hard in several years ago, but eventually regretted, was like the tackle boxes, the clear.
Those are tough.
The clear single layer tackle boxes that a lot of people recommend.
Yeah, exactly.
I found that they just waste too much space. Like, you can, they have the little dividers so that you have the tackle box dividers, and you can have exactly the right amount of space for your heads and your guns and your Space Marine helmets, whatever. But there's a lot of wasted space inside that hard plastic shell.
Yeah.
Like, you have the little 3-dimensional rectangle there that's going to be your slot for putting all your bolters in, and you're only going to fill that like maybe a quarter full before you say, okay, and then this next little divider, I'm going to put the other arm in, or the torsos in. And it's kind of nice because that one tackle box has all your Space Marine bits, and they're nicely divided by what part of the body they are, and so it's organized, and as long as you know where that tackle box is, like, it's pretty easy to access your library.
Yeah.
But it takes a lot of space if you're gonna buy one of those bins for every different model kit that you
Right.
have or what have you. Like there's a lot of wasted space in those hard tackle box kits, and I did go like hard into those at one point a
Hmm.
few years back. Like I bought 10 of those
Yeah.
Walmart or Target tackle boxes, and I put a bunch of bits in there, and then I had a big stack of tackle boxes, and a lot of it is empty space. And then you're like, okay, but I have these other bits, and of course it has all
Doesn't
these
quite fit.
yeah, all these are like weird little stressors, like kind of. I don't think I'm obsessive compulsive, but like there are like kind of some OCD stressors of like, but now there's like an entirely empty cell in this
Right.
tackle box. Or is it okay to put a couple of Eldar heads in with a dark Eldar kit? Like, can I do that? Can I split my Eldars across a couple of different tackle
See,
boxes?
I would think
that's not
yes,
good. Like,
because those Eldar heads in a dark Eldar kit, you could be like, well, maybe this guy, maybe he's got a severed Eldar head. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I put the bits in there, or maybe it's going
but
to be under his
that's
foot
the
or on the
problem.
ground. Yeah.
That's the problem, is because you get all these reasons, you got all these pros and all these cons against putting the Eldar with the Dark Eldar, and then like your your sorting day becomes like you've filled up 2 tackle boxes out of your giant collection
Right.
because you've just been arguing with yourself about whether or not these bits go in these tackle boxes, or you filled up all you bought yourself 10 of these trays and you filled them all up, and then you realize you still have like more than half of your collection left to go, and you're like,
Yeah.
all right, I'll reorganize these. I'll put the left and the right arms into the same cell of these tackle boxes, and then it just, I don't know, organizing any collection like that, these are the little thoughts that go through your head. But
Right.
so getting back to my original point, that's why I like little plastic bags.
Yeah.
So you can have all of your left arms in one tiny bag, all your right arms in a tiny bag, all your heads in a tiny bag. And then if those are all in the same kit, you can throw all those tiny bags, which compress to basically no volume, into a sandwich bag. So you have a sandwich bag with all your Dark Eldar warriors, and it's all neatly subdivided within there. And it's clear, and you can basically see from looking at the sandwich bag, like, oh yeah, these are my Dark Eldar work, or you could even write it on the side of the bag. And then that compresses down nicely, and then you can put that into a larger container, which is also clear, so that you can see, oh yeah, this is the container that has a whole bunch of those sandwich bags in it with. I think this is my Dark Eldar box. Yeah. These are my Dark Eldar kits in
Something
here.
quick.
And
You can see inside. You see
so
them spiky bits.
yeah. I recognize that bayonet that's going to snap immediately. But I stand by it. In those little plastic baggies, it will not snap.
Right.
Plastic bags in plastic bags in a clear hard case is a very good way of storing, especially unassembled. It's I liked for that. But even assembled minis that are like unpainted, you can do the same kind of bags in a hard plastic container. I still like that system. What do you do for painted minis, Casey?
So there are a couple things I do for painted minis. A while back I got a DVD case that has glass on the front, and the shelves removable. Like a stand up
with all the tiny little shelves for each DVD.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I moved the shelves up so that some of because I have some like taller models, they go on the bottom, and then I separated them by faction on each shelf, and you can see them. That's like a locked cabinet kind of thing. It's nice for display.
So it's like a really tall, thin cabinet.
Yeah.
Or is it like is it double stacked? So there's like 2 columns of DVDs, or is it just like one?
So it's like
one standing column of DVD boxes.
Yeah. So it's probably 5 feet tall.
Okay.
And like the width of a DVD case, in
Okay.
depth, and then it just
Sure,
has
sure,
two
sure.
like folding drawers, or doors that like cabinet doors that go on the outside.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it just sits kind of like a bookshelf, right up against the wall.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh man. The some of those have them so that the DVDs or the CDs or whatever are at an angle, but you found one where
It's
it's
just
like
flat.
horizontal shelving.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I had never thought about that. That's pretty clever. I like that.
Yeah, I found
So
it
yeah, you can put
a long
in.
time ago. Yeah.
Huh. It's always interesting when like a type of storage or technology is being phased out, and all of a sudden you can get that stuff for really cheap or on the
Yes.
side of the road. And,
Yeah.
there was the period of time where there were a bunch of CRTs on the side of the road, and then there were a bunch of those like old projection screen TVs
like
on the side of the
Mitsubishi
road.
friggin' TVs. You
Yep.
see those everywhere still.
Giant 32
Yeah.
inch screen or whatever.
32.
Yeah.
I had a 32 inch, and it might have even been bigger. It was like 42 inch CRT TV. It's
Whatever
been in my
they were,
garage
yeah.
forever, and I've been trying to get rid of it, and nobody will take it. Like I finally found a company who was willing to just kind of ignore it and take it away. But I had to
Okay.
bury it in a pile of garbage so that they didn't really
But-
see it to begin with, and they already made the agreement. So they got there and they're just like, well, guess we'll take it. Like you said you would. You said you would. I have a piece of paper that you signed. So yeah, it took a while, man. Nobody wants those things. Like this is no
Oh, of
wonder why you
course,
find
of
them on the
course.
side of the road.
Yeah. And then I think we're still in the phase where people are slowly getting the giant like hutches that TVs go in, like the entertainment system cabinets.
Mhm.
Like sometimes they're like built out of nice oak or whatever, and they have like the big square where your big TV goes. There's like, tons of supports underneath, but then there's all the shelves for your VCR player and your DVD player and all
My
that
parents
stuff.
have one.
And
It's
yeah,
huge.
but it's interesting. It's interesting when these things get phased out and then nobody has a good use for them. But if you can find a clever use for them, like you feel like a genius, and you can get as many of them as you want.
Right.
Like we're finally at the point where you're not seeing a ton of CRT TVs on the side of the road anymore.
Right.
But 5 years ago, you absolutely could have as many CRTs as you wanted from like an afternoon of driving around your town.
Absolutely.
And I think we're getting to that point now with those DVD shelves.
Yes.
Because I mean, DVDs are still being sold, but fewer and fewer people are buying them. And more and more people are just getting rid of their collections and getting rid of those. Yeah, exactly. And these things happen, but if you can find like a clever use for that old technology. Anyway, I had never thought of like those DVD racks as being good for anything anymore.
Yes.
And so you just blew my mind. That's why I went off on this little tangent here. But what I'm trying to say is, Casey, that makes me so happy that you have found a way to make an old DVD rack into a mini. And it actually sounds perfect.
It's fantastic.
You have... Did you... So what are you using DVD cases as your shelves?
No,
like,
it's all made out of fairly nice wood. It's like a cherry stained wood with nice glass and some like filigree on it. The shelves are wood. They just sit, just like any cabinet would, and they're adjustable.
Oh, okay. I was imagining a different design, but that is also a good. Yeah. I was thinking of like do you know almost like a CD tower?
Where it's angled.
The case itself is, they got just the little ridges on the side, the uprights that kind of hold each case. And so I was thinking of one of those, but what you have there also sounds awesome.
Well, I mean, I have had a couple of those, the kind you're talking about without the slanted slots. In which case, you could slide a piece of like cardstock.
Horizontal slots.
Yeah.
I mean, you could even you get some glass cuts so that you have like an awesome little shelves.
yeah.
That's what I had in my mind. But
No, so the one I have is also, like I was saying, it's like 5 feet tall. Depth of a DVD, but the width, it's like 3.5 feet wide. So they're long shelves, and so I can fill each shelf with that stuff.
Yeah, that's great. So
that's
for storage
20%.
and display like that, that's great.
Yeah.
So because you can see what's in there because you got the glass, and also dust protection is a pretty important thing. Like if you're going to display your minis, you want to have them enclosed. Dust builds up in any house or apartment, and I don't know if there's a good way to get them off minis, really.
Dust repellent paper.
Okay. All right. But no, that sounds great, Casey. You get, that's awesome.
Yeah, I also use.
Have you thought about
shadow
putting?
boxes.
Yeah. Nice.
Like shot glass display.
Mm-hmm.
Flat shelves. Yeah.
That's something to look at every time I'm in a craft store. Like I go in there and I get whatever stupid thing that I had in mind, and then I walk around the whole rest of the store for, Michael's or Hobby Lobby or whatever. And I almost always, like after I get through the dried flower section, like I make my way over to the shadow boxes and
I know exactly, like I could see it in my mind, like, because they're probably laid out very similarly across states.
Oh yeah.
Like I know exactly
they know what
this
they're
journey
doing.
you're taking right now. I take the same journey.
Yeah. Past the frames. Yeah.
It's so funny. Oh.
Um,
Anyways, continue.
Well, no, I just the shadow boxes and of course the like little pieces of paper they have in there for promotion. It's like this is where you can put your sports shot glasses and your signed baseballs and your signed footballs and I'm just like shot glass is pretty similar dimensions to like a Reaver. Yeah.
Right. You're just trying to think about that height, like. I almost want to bring it with you, just be like, is this gonna fit?
Sometimes they do that. That always cracks me up when I walk into a store with like something for size comparison. Sure. So sometimes they go into stores with a mini with like a magnet on the base.
Oh yeah.
So we'll get to this later, but I like to store my minis using magnets on their bases. That's a really convenient thing for me. We'll talk about cake pans later, though. But if I'm going into a store to look for something that my minis can stick to, some grades of steels are ferromagnetic, and some stainless steels are not.
Right.
Like the nicest stainless steels, you can't stick a magnet to it. It doesn't work. And so if you are shopping for something to stick your magnetized minis to, you gotta have that magnet with you in the store so you can kind of like stick it to stuff.
Make sure, yeah.
So this example is more like when I'm, in the home supply and cooking part of Walmart or whatever, going up to the cake pans and trying to stick my warrior of corn onto the cake pans in Walmart and stuff. And you should always wash any cooking implement that you get from a store. Yeah. Always. Yeah. Yeah. Because you don't know, who's been touching it with like weird perfumes, who's been touching it with warriors of corn or demon kind. Yeah.
Handling it. Yeah.
But,
probably.
Yeah, it always cracks me up. I still love going to a craft store with, different types of nerds. You got your scrapbookers and you got your knitters and whatever crafts the church ladies are doing and stuff, and I'm in there with like a pocket full of warriors and like I've got dwarves in my pocket to see if they're actually no, dwarves aren't quite what you want for measuring out a shadow box. You want
you need
something with like a battle axe held over their head.
That has been a problem with the shadow boxes. Like I can fit most normal infantry into shadow boxes, but anything taller, like, or if that sword is raised or anything like that, like I'm screwed. So
You got an orc with a big axe over their
Yes.
head, and that's taller than a shot glass.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, it's nice for some things. Like I put like active stuff in there that I used to be right above my desk. I had three of them, three of those like displays. So it's like, okay, well here's projects that I've started painting, right? So I can just reach up, open it. They're not dusty. They've been protected. Nobody's been touching them except for me. There's not like, you know, grease on them or whatever. So it's easy enough to just pick up and grab, and it's a quick storage solution that's again within arm's reach. You know, it's right there on the wall. So that's usually what I use them for.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you have lights in any of your setups right now? LEDs? Like,
No, I wish I did.
You know, sometimes get some nice track lighting that kind of points at your shadow boxes from. Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the
well,
goal.
yeah. So for that'd be cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Build a new studio. Sell the stupid pool table.
Hey, first things first.
Yep.
But there are a lot of options out there for like display cases. You know, even like China display cases for antique China cabinets or hutches or whatever you call them, like can be converted. Long before there were Space Marines, there were little old ladies with their China collections and their Hummels and their
tiny spoons,
garden gnomes that got to live in tiny spoons. Dale Earnhardt commemorative NASCAR plates. Like,
you could do a lot.
Actually, that's pretty. Did our podcast just get canceled? I don't know. I'm sorry.
Things you can fit in a China hutch, episode 3. NASCAR memorabilia. Now you got to be careful of them tires.
Hobbies that we don't share and have decided to make fun of today.
Yeah, people with China cabinets.
Of course, you know, like a couple years from now, one of us is going to get really interested in tiny spoons, though. Like, there's going to be.
Oh yeah, you know, somehow I'll have those commemorative tiny spoons, and I'll visit every state and find one, and you know, I don't know what I'll do with it. Hang them. They make these funky little.
I got my Memphis spoon. Yeah,
my Memphis spoon. I ate peanut butter and bananas with that Memphis spoon.
You're not supposed to use them, Casey. They're display only.
What's the point? I don't understand.
You just tanked the resale value.
Yeah, I go to somewhere else. I'll like eat something with that spoon. It'll be this whole thing. Resale value.
you try to. Does eBay have rules about people showing up in pictures of items that are for sale?
I mean, I think they might be a little upset if you were actively licking the spoon you were trying to sell.
Well, that's what I was thinking of. Like
Right.
your cover photo is like a nice picture of your Memphis spoon, and then like picture 2 is just this moron licking like peanut butter on.
Genuine peanut butter has been on this spoon. Oh, no. Yeah, they might be a little upset about that. Spread of disease is it's pretty serious these days. Like, yeah. I don't know. I don't even know if they would do anything about that. I suppose you'd have to then, with that picture, convince someone to actually pay you money to buy it.
Well, this is a whole other time. We're gonna have an episode on eBay
For
someday,
sure.
but like,
Yeah.
I think, you know, we all have our mental images of, you know, a very bland version of the person you're buying from on an eBay auction.
Oh yeah,
But like,
yeah, they are blank.
but
faces.
the person you're buying from is probably far stranger than what you have in your mind. Yeah,
Maybe that's
like
a good call. Then I'll just get all these
like
commemorative spoons
ghostly
and-
figure with like a smooth face.
Yes,
like
exactly.
you don't really know who you're buying from. But yeah, how weird would eBay be if like every account that you bought from had like a smiling
Right.
picture of like the strange man
that's
on the
what
other
Facebook
side
did,
with the
right? That's literally what Facebook
Oh,
did.
yeah.
They uncraigslisted Craigslist. Like, I can look at people and look at their profile now, unless they've set it to
Oh yeah.
100% private, which like nobody does. I
Mm-hmm.
can go in and be like, okay, are you going to murder me or not? Like, no, okay, you seem like a not murdery type of person. I'll meet you in a back alley and sell you this thing out of my trunk. Like, no problem. Like, it's made Craigslist much more fun.
This is a different episode.
Get into the collectability of spoons and the dangers of meeting people on Craigslist. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in that case,
Well,
then,
gonna write this down for later.
Right.
But yeah, for display of minis, there are a lot of options out there that were not originally conceived of for displaying minis.
Absolutely.
You got your DVD collections, where you can replace with your orc collections, your goblin collections. Yeah. You got your china hutches, your spoon
the spoon. Oh my!
hutches.
My mom collects. I forget, or she did, anyways. Like they're just hanging on the wall, on a little hanger.
Hey, see if she still wants them. Maybe you can auction those off.
them all,
Like
sell
this just got real. Yeah.
We'll put that to the test
But
later.
what about for like deep storage?
Deep storage, yeah.
Do you have any painted minis that you just don't have room for in your case, and so you put deeper, or like half painted minis that you're not going to get around to for a while? What do you do with those guys?
So, being in a closet, I've pretty much cleaned out all of the shelves in this closet and put miniatures on them. So, like if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, then you'll kind of be able to see what I'm talking about. If not, just, theater of the mind, I'm surrounded by shelves that go from floor to ceiling, and there's probably a good 1.5 feet in between each shelf. And this goes all the way up to the ceiling. In the video itself, it kind of cuts off up here. And that's like 4 feet up in the air. Everything above that.
How many shelves are above your head?
Let's see, 3 shelves above my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they are filled with miniatures just on the shelf. Like not in boxes, like ones that are like halfway through projects and stuff. The rest are in the boxes they came in, whether or not they're usually not assembled. Like all the bits, like I said earlier, it's like anything that belongs in that box goes in that box, right? So I do know where everything is. That's mostly deep storage is being on this shelf in here. And I do move them around from time to time just to kind of make sure they're not getting ruined, like they're not getting dusty or anything. Like luckily, being in kind of an enclosed area with not a whole lot of airflow, unless I open the door and turn the fans on that I have, there's not a ton of dust in here, which has been pretty nice. So that's usually how I keep my stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's just luck, really, whether or not you have a dusty house or not.
Well, the house I lived in before,
or at least that's my understanding of architecture and
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so another storage option or technique that I like is cake pans, like steel bottomed cake pans that have the plastic covering that goes over the top. I really like those because I like to have my magnets or my minis on magnets.
Yeah.
So I glue magnets to the underside of the bases, and then my minis can stick to my painting handles. They can stick to cake pans. They can stick to the inside of steel lunch boxes. And so it gives some interesting options for storage and transport. And one nice thing about magnets for storage is that you're not rubbing the mini against foam or anything like that.
Yeah.
As long as the mini is sticking down to a surface and staying put there, it's not rubbing against other minis. It's not rubbing against foam. Especially since, I've said Dark Eldar a lot during this podcast, but that is a big part of my collection is Dark Eldar models. And they have spikes and thin bayonets and all kinds of stuff like that. And when that sticks into foam and then you pull them out of foam, you've broken off your weird ear blade thing on the helmet, and that's not going to glue right again.
Yeah, I've broken several skeleton warriors that way. They're like real fiddly spears, especially. And I keep those in foam. I didn't mention that. Yeah, actually, I have I have some Feldar foam cases that are like pluck
Okay.
foam, for bigger things.
Yeah.
And I also have what is it, the Citadel, whatever the big case that they sell, the super huge
And
army transport one.
okay, I have a
Um,
couple of the older Citadel or Games Workshop cases,
like the
the
flatter
black
ones.
ones that
Yeah.
are they're I think there's 3 layers of foam in there, but
Mhm.
it's kind of a traditional look to them. And I've had an army transport by Sabbath or something, or maybe it's by just Army Transporter. I don't know.
Could be, yeah.
I've had foam before. I've used
Yeah.
foam before, and certainly for some minis it works well.
Mhm.
For any of the more solid minis, like a Space Marine
Oh yeah.
transports well.
Yes.
Like they are glued to their base on big old boots, normally 2 big old boots glued to the base,
Yeah.
and there is no thin part or particularly spiky part on that
Yeah.
model. Just big, thick, meaty thighs and arms and shoulders, and their head fits right down in there. There's even their gun is thick and is not going to break no matter what you do
Yeah.
to it. So yeah, put those in foam, no problem. There's nothing going to get stuck in the foam, and normally they don't even have any like really long bits to them, like spears that kind of go outside the little rectangle of the foam or anything
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So some minis transport really well in foam, but a lot of the stuff I've had, I really do like the magnet system,
Mhm.
where you stick a magnet down to you stick the mini on a magnet down to a flat surface and have it be touching nothing. Those spikes are
Yeah.
just touching air. It's just the surface of the base touching steel is the only point of contact. And of course it depends. If you're using that for transport, you have to be careful because you can knock the magnet off the base, or you can knock the base off of the steel bottom, and then just have a lot of stuff rattling around in your case,
Right,
which isn't
yeah.
good. But for straight out storage, I really like cake pans. The height of a cake pan is just about right for most infantry, even if they're like holding a sword up or something.
Mhm.
For some of like standard bearers, it's the cake pan maybe isn't quite high enough for some standard bearers, and so maybe then you have to put it on like the side of the pan facing inward or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean, you're still
Or just store
magnetized,
it,
right?
or store it somewhere else. Yeah,
Yeah.
which works. You can do that.
That's really cool.
So when thinking about storage and how I've condensed down a pretty big collection into a manageable collection, one of the ways I do that for my assembled minis at least is use cake pans. And I do have one smallish display case where I can put my finished minis and the minis that I've put on my YouTube channel and I'm proud of. My painted minis that I like, I do have a case for those. But the vast majority of my built minis are in cake pans, and most of them are like built and primed, or they have a coat of paint from the airbrush or something where I'm playing around with ideas, but not quite ready to finish a particular mini. So that's where a lot of my stuff is right now, is halfway through completion, in the idea phase, still thinking about what I want to do with it. But anyway, those pans, they stack up nicely. So I have some shelves behind me where I sit and talk, and on each shelf I can fit like 4 cake pans on top of each other. And as long as I label the side of the pans, it's pretty decent organization, actually.
That's pretty great. I mean, it's a really good idea. Yeah, I mean, you have a video on your channel, don't you, about magnetizing and transportation, right?
I do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So I am very much in the mindset of putting a magnetized base on every one of my
Every
minis.
single model. Yeah.
I also use those for holding the minis.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I do have a couple of Games Workshop mini holders, but the thing I use mostly is a piece of wood with a magnet glued to the top for holding my minis, because all my bases have a magnet on them, so it works. But and there's a whole other topic, but
Magnetizing.
yeah, I've gone pretty deep in on like eBay Chinese neodymium magnets,
Right.
and over the course of a couple of years, I bought a bunch of different sizes and found some stuff that works for my bases. And that's just become like a thing. Like every once in a while, I'll lay out 100 bases and I'll get some of that 2-part epoxy, and I'll just go through and I'll make like 100 magnetized bases so that I have a supply ready for when I'm building my next project. And
that's pretty smart, man. That is pretty smart. Yeah, because I have bases laying around that, they're not doing anything, and I don't have magnets on anything. I don't even know where to start with that.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying that everyone should magnetize their stuff, but it can be pretty convenient.
Yeah.
There's pluses and minuses. You have to buy magnets for all your minis is one of the minuses. You know, some of the times it wouldn't necessarily be convenient. You can't be like putting your minis on top of your computer or anything like that because you got just very strong magnet attached.
Do not mix.
Yeah, like when I'm just walking around the room, like don't hold your phone and your mini in the same hand. Like,
Yeah.
Don't have your minis too close to your camera. Like, there's pluses and minuses to everything, but on the whole, for spiky minis, I like
minis in particular. Yeah, that foam really can wreck that, and it'll rub your paint off and that kind of thing. I mean, that certainly goes into like picking an army or picking models that you want to transport or keep safely. Is like, do you want to pick something that is fiddly that will probably break, or do you want to pick some beefy Space Marines? Like that. I think
that's normally pretty far down on the list of things people are thinking about. But
that's what I think.
Maybe when you get into like Skitarii or something like that with their super spindly, and then they've as we're recording this, it wasn't that long ago that we saw pictures of Skitarii cavalry jumping around, which is spindly connected to spindly like robot horse legs that are 1 foot of the thin robot horse leg is touching the base, and
that was always so weird. It's like, you understand these are going to be models that people have to transport and do things with. Like, why is there only one point of contact here? It makes no sense at all. I mean, even like flying bases and stuff are just such a pain in the ass. It makes no sense.
Yep. Well, in the vast reach that our podcast will have, we're just going to complain about this pretty frequently, and see if these game companies straighten up.
So somebody will reach out to us and be like, we make solutions for these things. Yeah.
Or, we worked hard on this cavalry. They look cool. Stop complaining.
Yeah. Well, okay. I will give them that. Like, those Skitarii cavalry look awesome. Like, they really look cool. Like, even so much as, like, I don't play 40K. I don't collect almost any 40K. And I'm like, those look pretty nice. I could use those for something. A nice conversion. Maybe some, I don't know, some funky Nurgle something or other. They just look cool. I don't know.
If you make a cyborg creature with 4 legs, put at least 2 of the legs on the ground with a decent surface area of contact.
Yeah.
Maybe with like center of gravity and balance in mind too.
Yeah. Well, have you ever had to do that? Like, I mean, since you're putting magnets on, like you're kind of weighting that bottom part a little bit on that base. Yeah.
So there's some other like pros and cons like for minis that do have a really weak attachment to the base, like pulling the mini off of the steel sheet, like the force of pulling the magnet off of the steel sheet, I do have to be careful. So for some minis, I will, try to grab them by the base and pick them up that way instead of just grabbing the chest or whatever and pulling up. Of course, again, no worries for something built solid like a Space Marine. Like you just pick that up from any part and break the contact with the magnet in the base there. But complaining about spindly bits that's a whole nother podcast too. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah.
Like we got our
so far all these podcasts we're doing are just creating new ideas for more podcasts. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, stay tuned. There's a
Yeah.
lot of great stuff coming up on this channel, but spoilers, the spindly bits. Oh.
Spindly bits. If you have a suggestion for a podcast for us or some kind of topic, whatever that might be, that involves the hobby in some way, please let us know on our YouTube channel down in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell so you can get notifications, hopefully every other Monday when we put these up.
Do you just do that automatically now, Casey? Like, is that habit? Like,
I don't know. It just came out. You know?
Did you plan that?
No.
Did you black out for a second and just like
I did just a little bit.
You do have to say,
but the YouTube thing just kind of kicked in. It's like hit that bell, do the thing. I don't ever say that on my YouTube channel.
What's the name of the YouTube channel that they should go to subscribe to and ring the bell, Casey?
That would be Paint Bravely.
The podcast?
Sure. Is it? Yeah, I guess it is. Paint Bravely, the podcast. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I think we ruined this.
No, this is salvageable.
Keep
going.
Yeah, we're gonna keep going. All right, shush.
Don't ever stop.
Right. Anyways. I wasn't planning on ending. I was just trying to give you
Pull it out.
Let's talk about the comments section on our YouTube channel because this seems like a good place to do it.
Hold it together, Casey.
All right, well, thank you for joining us on another episode of Paint Bravely. If you enjoyed this podcast, please help us out by leaving us a review on iTunes, subscribing to the YouTube channel, and sharing this message with your hobby friends. And as always, we appreciate you for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
See you next time.
All right, that was salvaged.
Good work.